So Jay, I'm going to start with you. Quick thoughts on the Global 7500. What do you think of the aircraft?
Oh, I think it's going to be a fabulous airplane. I think it's going to set the tone both for function, comfort, connectivity. And you know, I've got great friends here from all the OEMs, and I think everybody is using these times to reset the tone for all of those important factors for business aviation. And I applaud the 7500.
Pascal, your views?
I think it's a very exciting aircraft for sure. And I was looking at the nice presentation that just happened before, and especially when we had that nice picture of that kitchen, you know, I found myself reaching for the checkbook. And that's when I remembered I'm poor, actually, so it's not for me.
You're not poor, you work for Jetcraft.
That was my sad moment, you know.
And Steve, it would be really unfair to ask you the same question. So what do you think of the Global 7500?
It's a wonderful aircraft.
Okay. Steve, sticking with you. Out of 10, how would you score 2018 for the aircraft sales market?
For the aircraft sales market, we had the best sales year that we've had over the last 3 years. We've been very pleased with the way the market has responded. And in particular to what, the announcement of our new models, we found that the market came in very strong. It was almost as if they were waiting for the announcement. And when you see the number of orders that came in the day after the announcement was impressive. We hadn't seen an NBAA like that in quite a while. But I would say overall, we saw the market sentiment improve significantly in 2018. The one issue that we kept running into was we never lost a deal. We just had people who were waiting. We had a lot of interest, especially in the Asia Pacific market. We saw a lot of people just hanging back. Same thing happened in the US market a couple of times, but overall people finally said we're ready to move forward. They were comfortable and they really appreciated the new entrants that came into the marketplace.
So going back to the question, out of 10, what would you score?
I'd give it an 8.
An 8?
An 8.
Jay?
What was it, 2018? Well, I love the fact that there's always a little room to grow, so I'll give it a 10.
A 10?
Oh, very nice.
And Pascal?
Well, I think I'll have to give it a 10 as well, because 2018 has been for Jetcraft the best year ever. So we broke the 100 aircraft mark in 18, and that leaves us little choice but do better next year.
Jay, do you want to take us through take us through what happened to inventory last year? I think everyone knows the big picture that we saw a lot of pre-owned aircraft. Where did they all go?
You know, I think that where did they all go? They sold. And I think the beautiful thing about inventory is the elasticity of inventory. It comes and it goes. I think that it created some of our biggest problems as aircraft brokers and as our industry to try to find good equipment with great pedigree in parts of the world because most of the transactions really still occurred in North America. So to bring an airplane in from parts of the world where people didn't understand or didn't have the maturity in the marketplace to maintain them or hangar them or do the kind of things that we in North America really demanded, it was very difficult to find inventory. And I'm sure we're going to talk about 2019 because I think that the pendulum is going to swing a little more positively with a little more inventory, not to change the dynamic of pricing, but to change the dynamic of opportunity and choice.
Pascal, one of the dollar, America was very hot last year, and the dollar was also very strong compared to a lot of other currencies. What were your thoughts on the pre-owned market in your region?
Well, as I said, we had a great year. If you look at the pre-owned market, it has worked really well. We expect it to continue in the same fashion. Everything is not perfect though. It rarely is. And in some markets we have seen absorption rates going up. I'm thinking Global 5000, for instance, or Global 6000. It's not tragic by any means, and it's compensated to an extent by other markets. Think Falcon 7X or Gulfstream 550, which are trading quite strongly right now. And if we want to know why, again, on the 5,000 and 6,000, the absorption rate has been going up, The honest answer is I don't know. I can imagine a few things. Maybe the 5500 and 6500 do have an influence on that. Or maybe somebody looking at the market and being in the market for an acquisition looks at a very late model XRS, for instance, and feels that the gap between the XRS and the 6000 is not entirely justified. So what is going to happen? Probably the XRS is going to raise a bit, the 6000 is going to come down a bit, and it will even out.
Steve, one of the things all the OEMs were waiting for was for the pre-owned inventory to fall. Did you notice it having an effect? Did you see more inquiries from people who couldn't find a pre-owned aircraft they wanted?
Yeah, the pre-owned market was very strong last year. When you take a look at the fact that, there was a 4-to-1 ratio of pre-owned to new aircraft sales, it's indicative that the market sentiment was definitely looking for good value. And one of the things that we found with the pre-owned market as well is we always are willing to go ahead and offer a trade-in quote and look at a trade-in. Many times the client was able to sell the aircraft prior to us even having to get involved in it. And the other aspect we found was when you did have a pre-owned aircraft come into the balance sheet, it was already spoken for by the time we took it in. Again, very strong sentiment. Certain models in particular, like the 300 for us, were very strong. And we found that when we had one, we had people coming to us saying, we're looking for a pre-owned 300, we're looking for a pre-owned Legacy 650. Again, very strong market sentiment overall. Found that the pre-owned market was, again, a 4-to-1 ratio. And what we also found was when we're out there competing in the marketplace, it wasn't always against another new product. It was against our own product in the pre-owned market. So very strong. And again, when you see the levels go down as low as they have been, also indicative that we're seeing demand pick up, and that is going to hopefully outstrip supply this year.
Jay, it's a very different, 2019 is a very different market to 2012 or 2015. Are you worried that there won't be enough inventory for brokers?
Do I worry that there won't be enough inventory? I always worry about that. We had a conference actually that you put on, and and it was towards the end of the year, and we talked about what would we do at the end of the year, what will the rest of our year be like, to the question to the brokers, and the answer was it'll depend completely on what inventory there is, and it'll also depend, in fact, at the end of the year, what the manufacturers might have in terms of immediate availability for an aircraft. Because immediacy was one of the keynotes of being able to sell an airplane. And I think that there were some Bombardier, Embraer, were smart enough, and I use the word smart enough, to have a few pieces of inventory in a category or two, because it gave the opportunity to those OEMs to make some year-end sales and get more people into that product. But, you asked the question interestingly, 2012, years past compared to 2018 or 2019, I've stopped comparing everything to 2008 or 2009. I think that those are bygone days that don't really represent where the world is. More interestingly, when we had more inventory and longer number of days to sell, was really 2015, 2016 as it compared.
I like your thoughts about immediacy, because let's not compare to 2008, 2009, but then buyers were prepared to wait 3 or 4 years for an aircraft or pay a premium. Pascal, do you think buyers want to get their aircraft faster now? Are the days of putting down an order and waiting?
Well, as you said, buyers were prepared to wait. They don't really had a choice in 2008 or 2007, 2006, which were great years. What was not right, I think, is that you actually had appreciation on some aircraft. People could make money by selling an aircraft that they didn't even have taken delivery of, or that they had flown 1 year and still come out and make a profit out of it. An aircraft is a tool, and I think depreciation should be normal, should be expected, really.
Steve, obviously all OEMs would like 10-year backlogs, and then your job would be very easy. But do you think buyers now will wait? Do you think there are buyers who, because if you were a Fortune 50 mining company, you're used to taking huge investment decisions. But if you're a tech company, you're not, you're used to pivoting your company overnight. Do you think that the sentiments change?
And what we found is there's a differentiation between, let's say, a light jet demands versus a medium to super mid-sized jet. In the medium to super mid-sized jet, people want exactly what they want. We find that those are going to be aircraft that are going to be configurable, so they're willing to wait a reasonable amount of time. The light jet market, much more of an immediacy. They have a demand for it right there. They're willing to take, and this is where we have to be smart, we have to make sure that we've configured aircraft for them because they are willing to take delivery in a very short period of time. What we found last year in several cases was, and especially here in Europe, people wanted to, when came in, spec'd out the aircraft and finally said, wait, you happen to have something in your pre-owned stable? I'm willing to take that instead, let me switch. We also saw that people will take something that's in the pre-owned market as a bridge to what they eventually want because they want to go ahead, they still want to configure the aircraft, they want to personalize it themselves. So more and more of what we'll see on that super mid to mid, they'll take something as an interim bridge aircraft, but they want to get right into exactly what they want, and they're very particular in their spec.
So all of the OEMs, you launched 2 Praetor aircraft last year. We've seen, the G500, the G600, the Cessna has got some very exciting citation. Do you have to keep launching new aircraft to get customers? Are the days of having a model lasting for 10 years over?
Yeah, I think what you see in the marketplace right now is it's demanding to have a certain level of performance, which is driven by the technology and the cabin comfort. In the past, what you would hear people talk about is speed. Then they talk about connectivity. Now they're talking about cabin comfort. People want to be able to function when they get off the aircraft because it's just that. It is a business tool. And if you are incapacitated, it doesn't make sense. That's why cabin altitude has become such a major piece of what we're working on. In addition, they also want to make sure they get there in comfort from a flying characteristic standpoint. The ride must be smooth. That's why the technology of the fly-by-wire comes in. And the beautiful thing about fly-by-wire as well is it reduces the weight, which means you can take more fuel on board, which increases your range and speed. So when you look at that technology drives the long-term performance. So these are all things that people see and they demand. Again, we're in an economy right now as we go into this shared economy and we see what's happening going forward. People want things to be exactly what they see out there. They have a vision, and they want to see that vision made reality. That's why, as OEMs, we have to take a look at what are the trends, what's important out there, and that performance driven by the technology and that cabin comfort cannot be underestimated.
Pascal, comment on new aircraft?
On new aircraft?
Or new models?
I think a lot of very exciting new aircraft are coming to the market. And one interesting thing, we do a 10-year forecast every year. And for the next 10 years, it looks like 1/3 of the aircraft that are going to be delivered are going to be large cabin aircraft, ultra long range aircraft. And from that 1/3 of total deliveries, the manufacturers will make out 60% of their revenue. So you can see why they love these long-range aircraft and large cabin aircraft. And I think it's perfectly right. We see the trend in the pre-owned market as well, where people tend to migrate towards larger aircraft with more capabilities.
Which is a comment we've had from the audience, that there will be plenty of inventory in the next year or so as the OEMs bring the 6500, 7500, G500, G600, Falcon 8X and 6X to market, and that none of these entry level, so they're all throwing out another aircraft. Jay, do you agree with that? Do you think that there's going to be lots of inventory as the new models arrive?
Well, as I said a little while ago, there's going to be a sustainable amount of new inventory coming in. There's no such thing as a wholesale dumping of inventory because of a large number of new aircraft coming on, and that's healthy. They'll trickle in. As they trickle in, it'll take a while to get to a critical mass of new aircraft on the market, vis-a-vis a critical mass of trade-ins coming in. I think it's going to be a healthy, measured introduction of new aircraft, and then a healthy, measured number of pre-owned aircraft that are being traded in for it. So I think this is not going to be an opportunity where our market will suffer our pre-owned market will suffer. I think our pre-owned market will get stronger because those of us in this market will have a little bit more inventory that's newer to remarket and sell.
Stephen, going back to your last comment, we're seeing a lot of talk about the sharing economy and charter. The interiors and cabin comfort and noise and cabin altitudes, a lot of focus. The interiors are still very traditional, aren't they? You know, we all talk to people who would rather fly commercial than fly, you know, sleep next to their boss in a standard, or be forced to work when they could be watching a video and sipping champagne in business class. Are you looking at making cabins more private? Or, you know, you look at the pods on a first-class aircraft, and there isn't really anything like that in business aviation.
You know, I think one of the great things about the business aircraft is that you are able to be productive on board. Having traveled a lot more this year with my boss on board, I can tell you that it is nonstop when you're on board the aircraft. There is no relaxation. There's no watching a video.
You were the person complaining to me last night.
Yeah. But I think what we'll see is that the business aircraft is just that, a tool. But the other thing that we found interesting as we talk to people, you know, the stand-up cabin, especially in the mid-size and super mid-size, is key. And when you take a look at the way the aircraft is being used, even some of the ultra-long-range aircraft, the majority of the missions are 2 hours or less. And that's one of the things that we have found. A lot of our client base who are traditional ultra-long-range and they have the need for it are also looking at our super mid because of the technology, the performance, and what they're able to get out of that. When you're only on board with 3 or 4 people, it makes sense. So from that standpoint, we see more and more companies coming in, private individuals coming in, and are looking at a diversification to right-size the aircraft to the mission that they're flying. That's why when they get on board one of our aircraft, especially when you take a look at the super mid, when they have the stand-up cabin, when they have that cabin comfort, the quiet, and the ability to work on board is very, very important. I can say that I have heard that people have said, it would be great to get my time back, but the reality is, if you're going to be productive in this environment, you're going to be staying ahead of where the competition is or staying relevant in the marketplace, you need that ability to work on board in privacy.
Okay, we've got another nice question. With more longer range aircraft and more AOCs operating, with more longer range aircraft and more aircraft on AOCs, you have tighter crew regulations. How are we addressing the pilot shortage? Jay, is this becoming more of an issue when you sell an aircraft, finding a pilot to go with it, or pilots?
The entire crewing experience is becoming more of an issue, not just pilots, but maintenance techs. I think that it's, even if you look at the management companies and you look at their growth, every facet of the operational side of our equipment right now is a greater challenge than it was before. Not insurmountable, not something that we, working hard, can't overcome. But yes, it's a little bit like finance. We would say to people, you can't pick a plane on Friday and expect the lender to lend on it the next Wednesday. It takes longer. So all of these operational challenges like staffing, you need to begin that process when you begin to think about aircraft, not when you've chosen one, because it is more of a challenge today.
Yeah, I was going to say that the workforce in general is going to be a major issue for this industry, and not just with pilots and technicians, but also production staff, engineers. When you take a look at where the economy is, especially in the United States right now, unemployment has dropped substantially when you're down below 4%. And we even have that right now in Florida. When you take a look at Brevard County, we've got 1/3 of all the aerospace workers right now just in the county in Florida. And when you've got 25,000 plus engineers with 9 different companies in Brevard County, we are in a fight every day for labor, not just for pilots and technicians, production people, engineers, customer staff, delivery center staff, design staff. This is an issue overall that we as an industry, aerospace, need to approach and make sure that we're encouraging people. You know, we talk about STEM in the United States. Brazil has been doing it for over 70 years, and we've got a great pipeline of engineers. As a industry, we need to focus on what it costs, what it entails to bring someone on board. You know, we were talking about pilots the other day. It costs over $300,000 to get a pilot's license in ATP right now. okay? This is a major investment. By the way, a doctor, you're gonna have the same amount of debt coming out of school. How do we have young people, or people in general, come into the industry and make it an attractive industry? Work-life balance. This is the other thing that we have with pilots. Why are they attracted to the airlines? These are all things. So I take a look at what is one of the major headwinds that we have to face today, and that is how do we attract that workforce in here and make sure we have a steady, healthy pipeline of people coming on board.
Pascal?
Well, I was going to ask maybe a bit of a provocative question, but is there really a pilot shortage, and is there really a pilot shortage coming? I don't know. We obviously work with a lot of operators. We meet them every day. We speak with them, and for every opening they have for a pilot position, they literally receive hundreds of candidates. So I'm not so sure there really is a pilot shortage, or there really will be a pilot shortage.
I think there's one more piece, and that is compensation. And you know, you're fooling yourself, especially with maintenance or pilot, to think that you're going to hire somebody and not pay the right salary or not pay the right benefit package and expect them to stay. You'll just become a launching off point for them to find the next better opportunity. So as a buyer and an owner, you've got to be sensible, you've got to be smart, and you've got to be willing to make market with respect to compensation and benefits.
Okay, Steve, I've got a question for you. In fact, two questions. Joe Carfagna from Leading Edge is asking, and this is your chance to make an announcement on your birthday in front of Michael and everyone else in London. Does Embraer plan to enter the ultra-long-range space and compete with the 7500 on range and speed?
Not at this time. Unfortunately, Joe, I don't have an announcement to make. I would say that the ultra-long-range market is very well served by the existence and the current OEMs that are competing there right now. I would say that when you look at what we do, is we are focusing on that super mid-size market and down at the moment. That's what we're going to go ahead and really deliver from a technological and performance standpoint, something that's very akin to what you would have in the upper end of the market, but we're delivering it at a much more value-oriented price point. And we think, again, different mission profile. We're very comfortable there, and that's where we're spending our time with our technological focus. The other thing I would say, to turn it around a little bit, is where else are we focused on? Urban mobility. We talked about this sharing economy, and I'll turn it back again to that, is people are going to be accessing what we would consider private aviation in much different ways. So that urban mobility, you know, the Embraer X that we have, our partnership with Uber, what are we going to do with those 4 to 5 passenger aircraft? Or I shouldn't say aircraft anymore, those 4 or 5 passenger air mobility devices. We have the technology right now to go ahead and build them. We've got it on the drawing boards. We know what we need to do there, and they will be more electrified. They are going to be very eco-friendly. The biggest issue we have to overcome is how do we handle it from an air traffic control standpoint, and how do we handle it from a real estate standpoint? How do you move these people around? Where do they land? How do you move them in and out? That's where our focus is going to be. That upper end of the market, I have to say that our brethren and our fellow participants in the industry have done a great job on the upper end of the market. What we're focused on right now is how do we move those masses around? How do we make sure that we take advantage and are ahead of where we need to be for that shared economy? And you'll see that more and more come out.
And you've also got a question, any comments on the pre-owned lineage market?
The pre-owned lineage market is always unique. The buyers that are in there really have a very specific mission profile. I think the aircraft is fantastic from the standpoint, it's the largest aircraft that can go in and out of some very tight airports like Aspen, okay, because of the wingspan. It's unique in the fact that it is a 5-cabin aircraft with 4,600 nautical mile range, which then it doesn't have the range of an ultra long range, but it can move you and 19 other people very comfortably. So what we found is we've been able to sell a few of the pre-owned aircraft that we had in our fleet this year, you know, exactly where we expected them to be. And we're seeing more and more interest in the Lineage product line, albeit it's a very slim sliver So it's a very unique customer who knows their mission profile, and I will say that our client base who owns them today loves them and are passionate about it, but it's a very unique profile.
Any old-fashioned questions from anyone who can't use the app? And there's nothing wrong. Oh, we have an old-fashioned question, great. It's just coming, Mike's just coming to you now.
Hi, it's Patrick Margaret from Rushmore from Lux Aviation Group. For the OEMs, when selling a new aircraft to a client, can we consider giving 3 simulator courses for pilots? Because you need a minimum of 2 captains and 1 first officer. And similarly, when people are looking at buying second-hand products, that actually there is simulator training available. I can think of one example where we were looking to bring an aircraft on board and we had to wait 9 months for a type rating course.
I would say that one of our primary focuses right now is to expand the availability of our training. I think having simulators are going to be key. And that's something that we continue to look at and continue to expand with. I can tell you from our perspective for new aircraft, we always make sure that we have a minimum of 2 slots available as we introduce that, and we have pre-booked them. So again, when you're coming on board and you're going to buy a new aircraft from us, I can tell you that we do have the training courses available from that perspective.
I think the reality is, though, you actually need a minimum of 3 courses, 2 captain, 1 first officer, otherwise you can't fully crew the aircraft.
Yeah, and that is something that, again, in many cases, we also offer the 3rd course as well, and we do have those available for brand new people.
Okay, Pascal, you have stirred the debate. Few people are saying pilots and engineers are not the same, there's a shortage. And we're going to cover more on this tomorrow about business aviation labour shortage. And I think we can go through a lot of these. Question from a connectivity provider. You can guess which one. But I saw James Hardy typing a second ago. Does connectivity increase the resale value of an aircraft?
Well, I think we can safely say that yes, it does. It's something that is expected today from anybody buying an aircraft, especially again if it's a long-range aircraft. And whatever the cost is to upgrade your machine, it's safe to say that you will take this out again.
I think your microphone's not working. The connectivity let us down.
That's a good example. We need connectivity. So yeah, I was saying whatever the cost might be to upgrade an aircraft that is today not connected, it's safe to say that you will take this out again upon resale of the aircraft. And if you do not have it, your resale process is going to be longer anyway.
Well, I think, we used to get into an airplane and think about people only turning left, meaning the crew, and what did the crew have, and what equipment did they have. I think today there is so much more focus on what happens when a person comes into the airplane and turns right, and that's the executive, and that's the aircraft owner. And connectivity is key, because connectivity is productivity. And to allow for a high degree of productivity in the airplane stems from the connectivity. So that's really the first question when my fellow brokers call and ask me to describe an airplane. What internet system do you have? What cabin management system do you have? How is connectivity? So it is a very big factor into the value. Now, the good news is it's an add-on. So certainly, if it doesn't have it and you add it, I think you could attribute a high percentage of the installation and the acquisition cost of that connectivity to the value of the airplane.
Steve, one of the things we're seeing is that people want it on smaller cabin aircraft, don't they?
Yeah, no, one of the, in our product roadmap, one of the major things that we're always looking at is connectivity. And how do we stay ahead, or at least equal to where the technology is? And when you look at that, it's always coming up. And even if someone says, I may not want it, which is very rare, we still have to make sure the aircraft is provisioned for it, and it's provisioned for it in a way that we can agnostically change to make sure that we don't outdate ourselves. I think some of the key things that you're looking at with the connectivity is how do we have the satellite coverage, how do we have the ground coverage, and how do we have the antennas? Because on the smaller aircraft, it all comes down to antenna size affecting aerodynamics. And that's where the major advancements are being made. So when we look at that, we're constantly talking to the providers out there to make sure that we stay at least on track where the industry is.
So just for the record, 97% of people believe connectivity increases the value of the aircraft. Obviously, this isn't a fair survey, because to be able to vote in this, you have to be able to log into the Wi-Fi. And so many people who disagree don't, and someone has asked for the event Wi-Fi password again, and it is Aruba takes London. And we've got loads of connectivity and pilot questions coming up, which we can cover tomorrow. But let's go to thoughts on the refurbishment market. With so many new aircraft coming to the market, what are your thoughts on the aircraft refurbishment market, Pascal?
Well, I have to say that we also trade aircraft, so we buy aircraft before reselling them, and very often when we do that, the aircraft will go through at least a partial refurbishment, because it's simply easier to sell something that looks nice and is up to the latest standard of technology.
Okay. Jay, what potential headwinds do you see affecting the BizAv market, and what are you looking out for now?
Well, I think, there'll be an article I wrote that'll come out on Friday, and it says, is it a hangover or is it the flu? And I think that very oftentimes at the end of the year, while people are just gangbuster to get that last quarter over with, what does January look like? And so many times people are internalizing their introspective, meaning our customers, as they think about last year and think about what they've got to do this next year, and they aren't necessarily in the market for a capital investment in the first several weeks of the year. Compounding that, typically, we don't usually have government shutdowns that fortunately were over on Friday but lasted 33 days, or the kind of volatility in the stock market, or China trade talks. We had a lot of things coming into the first of the year. So is it a hangover that you can drink plenty of water, take a couple of aspirin, rest, get some sunshine, and be on the other side of it in a few weeks? Or is it the flu? Frankly, I think it's a hangover. And I think when we come out of some of these distractions, and I don't mean to minimize what we've gone through and make them distractions and not game changers, I think we're going to find the same solid foundation that we left at the end of the year. I don't think we're going to find a price degradation. I think we're going to be okay. But those external factors, more in fact than internal factors to our industry, are the headwinds that I see us having to pay very close attention to, and watch what happens in terms of economic growth, global factors that affect us. Those headwinds. I don't see the pilot shortages. I don't frankly see a lack of inventory as really being problems for us in 2019. And if you remember in Miami, one of the slides that you put up was a question of when we thought that this growth might end, and it was 2020. And I still don't think 2019, though we might have some slowing, I still think we have a great amount of confidence in our industry and in our economics to keep us going. But we got to pay close attention, every one of us in this room that go out in this marketplace. Be sensitive to the client, be sensitive to their concerns, and watch what they think are the headwinds in their own businesses.
Steve?
Yeah, I would say that we take a look at it from three particular policy standpoints. One is trade policy. That has a definitive impact. The potential for trade wars between the US, China will have a global impact. It's something that we have to get used to. And I think it's something that we need to make sure that our client base is going to get comfortable with. A second thing would be monetary policy. What's going to happen with the Fed, interest rates? That's going to have, again, another impact, and also long-term on the foreign exchange rates of what we see happening, because that is affecting global demand with a strong dollar. And the third thing then would be fiscal policy. You know, the U.S. economy right now is very strong. There's a lot of fiscal stimulus happening from a governmental standpoint. How long will that last? That's also going to be something globally that we have to take a look at when you look at the German markets right now, what's happening in the economy there. And then you again, we're sitting here right at the heart of Brexit. What's going to happen?
Congratulations, it's the first mention today.
Well, we're from out of town.
But these are the things that we take a look at. But one of the things I would say that overall the client base, consumer confidence, this, where we're dealing with in the global market right now, is normal. And we have to make sure that people get on board with that, understand it, and accept it. There is going to be uncertainty. The other thing is we've got a long-term, so far, economic growth. It's been very stable. And I think there's concerns long-term whether or not we'll have a recession this year, next year. We take a look at that based upon probability and say, we think that this market will continue in a strong fashion. We don't necessarily see huge growth. But then again, the risks that are on the downturn, people need to accept that and move on.
Pascal, when's the downturn coming?
The latest possible time, I would say. No, I mean, I'm not going to be very original here. Of course, we're in a cyclical industry. There will be a next downturn, that's clear. That's the only thing that we can be certain of. When is it going to happen? I don't have the magic answer. What I can tell you is that from our point of view, even though I mentioned some slowdown in some markets, it's compensated by other markets, and we see a lot of demand, actually, especially in North America. Europe is good as well. Asia is a good market. So for now, if we had a cockpit, all the little lights would be shining green, and that's where we are right now.
Okay, we've got so many questions. Any old school questions which trump, and I'm using this in the card sense, not the presidential, trump Slido? Secondly, could someone find the one person who's very pessimistic and give them a hug? And switching to questions, it's quicksire. So when will we know if it's a hangover or flu? The secret is to start drinking, and that will tell you. Pilot shortage, is it about quality or quantity? I think we all agree there's a limit to how many pilots you want on one aircraft at a time. In your opinions, can you each pick one winner and loser aircraft in 2018? Steve, you can just pick two winners from any Embraer aircraft you like.
The Praetor 600 is a winner all day long.
And your second winner would be the Praetor 500. Great. Jay, can you think of an...
Oh, I think rather than choose the airplane, why don't we talk about compliance? And I think this is a big year for compliance. And I think there's going to be a large percentage of airplanes that are not going to be compliant when we roll into 2020 that are going to create some real head scratchers for us all as an industry. So I think that, we have a good time selling older planes. We have a good time selling newer planes. We can find them all to be in great condition, some good, some bad. New ones can be in bad condition. I think compliance is going to be the big issue.
See, I knew you were too polite to pick on an OEM's failing aircraft, but what I'll do is I'll just put that question to Brian tomorrow and let him do that. Sanction comments? Anyone want to talk about sanctions? No? Okay. No, that really is a no. Comment, reality shows owners choose management company, or this is a question from an operator. Reality shows that owners choose management companies or operators late in delivery process. Could OEMs and brokers encourage owners to make that call earlier?
We always encourage people to make sure that they have everything they need to take delivery. The reality is some people move a little bit quicker than others, but I think proper preparation prevents poor performance, and that's one of the things that we have to do. That's why it's important when clients are engaged with brokers, okay, dealers out there, because they get them and they provoke those questions up front. So that's one of the key things is it's not a simple process to buy and operate an aircraft. It's complex, especially if you're going to do it safely. That's why people have to be encouraged to do these things earlier.
Okay, blatant playing to the two brokers next to you. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah, we've got one there. Microphone's just on its way to you.
Yeah, guys, I just wanted to know what your opinion was with these compliance issues and old age airplanes. How many airplanes do you think in the fleet are going to be retired after 2020 and thereafter, since so many airplanes are getting so old now?
I think in Miami we talked about there was 60% compliance. That left 40%. And I still talk to people who are reluctant to jump in and get scheduled, thinking that there are going to be more choices, that choices will be cheaper, or that the date will be extended. I think it could be a huge number, Steve.
And I would say that one of the issues that we have right now is that our MRO facilities are booked solid. I can't even take and get hangar space myself within our own MRO facilities unless I book it out 6 months in advance. That's how basically deep right now the demand is to go for ADSB out and everything else that we have going on board. It's people have woken up, but not enough, to Jay's point. And I think there are going to be some people who are looking at older aircraft who don't want to part with those aircraft because of emotional issues. We saw that recently with a client who came in and said, I'll never get rid of my older aircraft. It was something that I love. I'm making sure that I'm making investments in that airframe that are far beyond the worth that I'll ever get out of it. At the same time, I think it's also an opportunity for us as an industry to move people into these newer aircraft. And we need to encourage them and say, if you're going to get beyond your emotional attachment, take a look at the whole cold hard economics. But I will say, if you're not booked right now for an MRO, good luck.
Okay.
Yeah, I think clearly people who decided to wait are regretting it. And as you just said, it's a great opportunity for us to move them into a replacement aircraft.
Final question. Can you predict and sum up 2019 for everyone in this room in one word?
Excellent.
Fantastic. And let's meet on the 31st of December to have that chat again.
Fantastic.
Transformational.
Okay, and on that bombshell, thank you very much.